Welcome to Hannity. An illegal immigrant who should have been deported earlier this year has admitted in a jailhouse interview to killing a woman last week on a pier in San Francisco. I'm Eric Bowling in for Sean tonight. Francisco Sanchez, who's been deported 5 times and has 7 felony convictions, is accused of killing 32-year-old Catherine Steinle, but U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials are saying this could have prevented had they been notified of his release from prison. Back in March, Sanchez was in San Francisco police custody on felony drug charges, but local authorities decided not to prosecute him and set him free instead of alerting ICE so that he could be deported. The reason this is thought to have happened is because San Francisco is considered a sanctuary city. Joining me now with reaction is former Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security for U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, John Torres. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Torres. Sanctuary city, I think a lot of our audience would love to understand exactly what do you mean by sanctuary city? What does that entail?
A sanctuary city is a location that says they are not going to cooperate with immigration enforcement. In other words, they're not going to share any information about a person they may have in custody so that immigration authorities can act on it.
Okay, so tell me, does that mean if someone is picked up by the sanctuary city, the federal immigration laws don't apply anymore?
Well, it doesn't mean they don't apply, but what it means is immigration authorities are not going to know about it. And so immigration agents will have to go out on their own and try to locate this person so that they can bring them in to face a deportation hearing.
Now, are sanctuary cities, is there more crime in sanctuary cities because of this?
Well, unfortunately, there's the potential for more people to be victimized if, especially in a case like this, you're talking about letting a violent felon walk back out on the street.
And that's exactly what happened here. Explain, it's such a vicious cycle. So the illegal gets picked up, he commits a crime, he gets picked up, for whatever reason he gets released. ICE is not notified and he can go as he pleases, and then ICE can pick him up another time and again and again?
And unfortunately, that costs the taxpayers more money because ICE agents now have to go out and look for the people out on the street. And so you have a team that's going to be sent out, working out on the street. Potentially, there's an officer safety as well as a community safety factor because you have to actually arrest the person in possibly their own environment. So
what happens here when you have ICE officers who will go into a city like, I don't know, Washington, New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, San Francisco, San Diego? These are all sanctuary cities. So the agents will go in and will get no assistance from local authorities, police officers, or people who work for the city?
Well, there are varying degrees of sanctuary cities. In some cities, based on my experience, we've worked with police chiefs who said, look, we'll share information with you on violent felons or people who may pose an imminent threat to the community. But in other cities, it's flat out, we won't share any information, nor will we honor any requests from Immigration and Customs Enforcement to hold the person so that they can be transferred to ICE custody.
And then Mr. Sanchez kind of fell under that, right? So he was deported 5 prior times. Had ICE been notified that the city of San Francisco was going to let him go free, what would have happened?
If ICE had been notified and said, at this date, on this date and this time, we're going to let him go, ICE could have been standing by waiting to pick him up, to transfer him into custody and place him into, again, another deportation hearing in front of a judge. And at that point, the judge would make a decision whether he could stay and go. And based on his past track record, he likely would have been deported again.
And deported again, talk to us about that instead of being held. Why are these criminals not being held in prison?
There's 2 types of things that we're dealing with immigration law. There's civil law and then there's criminal law. For people that have been deported previously, they can be charged under federal criminal law with a reentry after deportation. It's a felony, up to 5 years in prison. For those that have not been deported in the past, they'll go into what's called the civil realm, civil law, and basically just placed in front of an immigration judge where they're held until they can be sent back to their country.
Now, this guy had 7 prior felony convictions, though.
And that's really what's very frustrating with this case. We're not talking about someone who is has no status here in the United States that is trying to make a better life for themselves. And, we're not talking about a day laborer or maybe a domestic servant. We're talking about a career criminal who is a recidivist and that is likely to cause harm in the community. And these are the types of people that local law enforcement should be working with the federal authorities to get off the street.
And but ICE has also let go convicted criminals as well. I think the numbers that we pulled up in 2014, some 30,500 convicted aliens in 2014 were released. 175 homicides, 373 sexual assaults, 186 kidnappings. I'm sure there are people sitting there right now going, what are we doing? These people are committing violent crimes and we're letting them go?
And if you talk to the average ICE agent out on the street, as I have over the past year or so, they are incredibly frustrated. They're being asked to exercise their discretion and not take certain people into custody until they rise to a certain level of crime. And unfortunately, in some cases, what happens is someone has to be victimized first. Someone actually has to be raped, robbed, murdered before they will become a priority. And so you have a number of incredibly frustrated agents out on the street.
I got to tell you have a number of incredibly frustrated Americans, too, watching right now, and frankly, scared Americans. Thank you very much, John. I appreciate your time. Join me now with reaction, our immigration attorney, Francisco Hernandez, and Fox News contributor, Katie Pavlich. Francisco, you heard Mr. Torres right there tell us the ICE agents are frustrated. We're letting go. We're releasing hardened criminals, murder, rape, sexual assault, kidnapping. What do you mean, no? You heard him.
No. And if I may just make this point very, very clear. Look, ICE knew he was there. Second, he should have been federally prosecuted 5 felonies ago. ICE allowed him, as what they call comity, another word for courtesy, to be transferred from L.A. to San Francisco. We're talking about federal law. They don't have to do anything the cities or the states want.
Let me finish. But let me finish. You're missing the point here. This is a sanctuary city. The sanctuary city has decided to ignore federal law and house these people.
But wait a minute. Let me tell you. Look, he had an immigration hold. Now, San Francisco, if they didn't honor the hold, you're right. They made a mistake. But that has nothing to do with Sanctuary City. Federal law, they could have picked him up and taken him to federal prosecution at any point. They don't have to wait for the city to act. Second, anytime anybody's processed in or out of the jail, they run the fingerprints, which go through the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security. First, guys, both sides are pointing the finger at each other. And you're right. The ones that are left being frustrated, not knowing what to do, are the foot soldiers, the ICE agents who are out there busting their butt, trying to chase. We're having them chase misdemeanor theft cases, shoplifting cases. When we got real criminals, violent criminals up here, we could go pick them up.
No,
guys,
you know what they're dealing with?
It makes no
they're
sense to
down
me
on the
either.
border babysitting because we don't have a secure border, so there's now children, and Border Patrol agents are now doing that. ICE is now being told not to go after these hardened criminals. They work together. The point is that there is a young woman who was shot dead by an illegal immigrant who was deported 5 times, had 7 felony records, and this is not an isolated incident, Eric. This is a situation that happens over and over again. You do a Google search of illegal alien kills, and you'll find a ton of stories with this exact situation happening. There was a report from ICE that showed between 2010 and 2014, 121 criminal aliens were released onto the streets, and after they were released by ICE, after committing violent crimes, they were then charged with murder. And so this is not something that is isolated. This is something that is a huge problem, and the government has failed on both the federal and the local level to enforce the law to keep people safe.
And the foot soldiers, the ICE agents, do want to go after these more serious criminals, but because everybody wants 11 million people deported at once, they're out there chasing everybody.
Yes,
focus on the bottom ones, but sanctuary cities have nothing to do with it.
You're conflating 2 issues. We know for a fact that these cities, these 31 American cities have told their police departments and anyone whoever else works for the city that they cannot communicate with ICE. They cannot tell ICE who's illegal. It's very important that communication between ICE and these cities happens. Hold on. Let's take a listen to this criminal who admitted shooting the young lady. Listen.
Well, nobody's going to stick up.
In the ground, when that's over there in the bench, put my leg and then see the one teacher and then see over there something like that.
Katie, this guy should have been in jail.
Well, he was in jail, and he was reported multiple times. And he says and admits that he specifically went to a sanctuary city because he knew that he would not be again deported. And this is the problem here. Obama. Let me finish my sentence, sir, if you would, for 2 seconds and not interrupt me rudely. If the Obama administration really cared, they would talk to these sanctuary cities and say, look, we need you to allow our federal immigration agents in there to get guys like this off of your streets. But the bottom line is that the Barack Obama ICE agency, which he is controlling through his executive orders on illegal immigration, he has said to the ICE agents, don't go into these cities, even though you have the authority to get these bad guys off the street. And not only that, but they have released tens of thousands of violent criminal aliens onto the streets who have convictions of murder and rape. So they're doing nothing to keep the American people safe from violent, illegal aliens that we should be deporting and keeping out of our country through a stronger border security plan.
Okay, well, guys, why did ICE allow him to be transferred to San Francisco if they knew that they weren't going to cooperate? Guys, they could have deported him. They could have prosecuted him in the federal system when he was taken. Now you interrupted me. What I'm saying, if you let me finish my sentence and not interrupt me rudely, is let him get prosecuted federally, where it starts at 5 years to life, not up to 5 years. Guys, the guy slipped through the federal system, not through the cities and sanctuary cities. That term doesn't even exist. It has nothing to do with this.
He's one that may have slipped through the system. I just reported 30,000 people in 2014 alone were let go. When's the next one?
Donald Trump
Francisco, when's the next murder that we're going to be talking about on
then don't pull a Donald Trump on us. Let's deal with
Here's why this matters, guys. Here's why this matters. Please roll the tape. Please roll the next tape. Go.
That's the only solace I've got. That's it. Is that we were so close.
She was just a young woman and starting to be in her prime, and had so much to live for, and to die so senselessly is terrible.
Now they're the parents, Francisco.
It's awful.
That's Catherine Stanley's parents.
It's awful. It's awful. And we want to blame San Francisco and President Obama? Blame the murderer.
Yeah,
and he should have been in federal prison.
This is the
5 years ago.
People like this man, who I will not name, were allowed to stay here on purpose. This is not like he slipped through the cracks. He didn't slip through the cracks. The 50,000 criminal aliens that the administration's released onto the streets they didn't slip through the cracks. They were allowed to walk and leave.
Allowed.
This is a systematic problem that has to be fixed because American lives are at stake here.
I have to leave it right there,
now
Katie.
we're talking about everything else but the subject.
I have to get out of here. I get a commercial break coming up, a hard break. Thank you guys very much.